long warned about the Chinese Communist Party's influence in Washington, D.C., as well as in state and local governments. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a hostage and ceasefire deal with Hamas must be conditional. That is, Israel must maintain control of Gaza's border with Egypt. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley is at the State Department with more on the Biden administration's view.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that a condition for a ceasefire proposal includes maintaining Israeli presence along the southern border of Gaza, along bordering with Egypt, known as the Philadelphia Corridor. Netanyahu called this area Hamas's lifeline. Netanyahu said that ceding this will allow Hamas fighters to resupply their arms. He said that if Israel withdraws temporarily, the international community will never allow it to return. Meanwhile, the Hamas terrorists are demanding Israel to completely withdraw from Gaza as part of any hostage deal. But this is different from the bridging proposal that Israel had previously agreed to. And in that proposal, Israel said that it would remove its troops, according to the State Department, from that border region.
And it is in the interest of Israel, and it's in the interest of Palestinians in Gaza as well, that Hamas not be able to smuggle arms in across the Philadelphia corridor. That is absolutely in the interest of both parties. But we are opposed to the long-term presence of IDF troops in Gaza.
Hamas leaders recently ordered its members on how to deal with hostages, a new order that the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller calls depraved.
When they make clear that they will execute innocent human beings rather than let them be rescued. People who, in many cases, aren't even citizens of Israel. Recall that there are citizens of other countries who continue to be held, countries with whom Hamas supposedly has no complaint, and Hamas's position is that it will execute those hostages rather than let them be released. I think that shows what a depraved organization Hamas actually is.
Miller called for Hamas to immediately be brought to justice, and meanwhile, Britain has suspended some of its arms exports to Israel, saying that it would violate international law. Now, the U.S. has not made a similar determination. Reporting from the State Department, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And meanwhile, the U.S. says it's working on a new ceasefire and hostage deal proposal with its Egyptian and Qatari counterparts. And unrest is making its way back onto campus universities, specifically Columbia University. Pro-Palestine demonstrators gathering outside the school's gate as students return to classes for the fall semester. Footage shows the iconic alma mater statue vandalized with red paint. University officials recently releasing a report on campus anti-Semitism and laid out guidelines for protests. The Ivy League school was the epicenter of a nationwide pro-Palestinian movement last spring. Activists demanded universities across the country to decouple from Israel over its military actions in Gaza. In some cases, those protests turning violent. Columbia University's president resigning last month after facing months of criticism over her handling of those demonstrations. And Harris and Trump now begin a post-Labor Day sprint to Election Day. While polls continue to show a tight race, the two candidates are ramping up appeal to battleground state voters heading into next week's debate. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. How are the poll numbers looking, and what is the latest messaging that we're seeing from both camps?
Good evening to you, Steve. So as of today, the main polling aggregators, including 538 and Real Clear Politics, are showing that Vice President Kamala Harris is maintaining a slight lead over former President Trump, while that's within the margin of error. So we're only 2 months until Election Day, but it remains to be a very tight race. And the Trump campaign advisors have told me before that they think Trump has historically been underestimated by polls, and that's what they think about the current numbers. Meanwhile, both of them are ramping up messaging, especially to battleground state voters. Harris's campaign today released a video mostly focused on the kind of bread and butter issues that voters who care about the economy and inflation have been urging them to address. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign, as the NFL season has officially begun, released new video on the campaign, basically targeting football fans. Let's take a look.
Building up the middle class will be a defining defining goal of my presidency.
She'll make groceries more affordable by cracking down on price gouging. And she'll cut housing costs by taking on corporate speculators.
I will fight for you with every breath in my body. Together, we will make America great.
Meanwhile, former President Trump today appealed to voters in New Hampshire, and that's after the Boston Globe published a leaked email from a top Trump campaign volunteer saying that the campaign believed that New Hampshire is no longer winnable for the Trump campaign. But the Trump campaign pushed back, saying that that top volunteer is not in that position as described, as well as saying that that email has misrepresented the campaign's operations. And Trump today also on Truth Social called on voters in New Hampshire to come out and vote, urging them to help him win in November in that important state. Trump will be campaigning in Pennsylvania as well as in Wisconsin later this week.
Very fascinating stuff, Iris. I remember, I think it was 2016. Trump lost New Hampshire, but only by less than half a point, maybe a quarter of a point. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes this election cycle for sure. And with that said, the first debate between Trump and Harris is coming up next week. How are the two candidates preparing?
So the reports are that Vice President Harris will be spending her final days of debate prep in Pittsburgh, where she's going to arrive on Thursday and then stay there leading up to the Tuesday debate. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign has told me before that Trump doesn't really need any debate prep, but Trump is having a relatively much lighter campaign schedule this week compared with the weeks before, meaning that presumably he is doing some of that at least. And we also know that both of them have been debating over the rules of that ABC debate. The Harris campaign told NBC News just today that they're still negotiating with the TV network over specific rules, meaning that while Trump said last week that rules have been confirmed, that mics will be muted while they're not speaking, things could still change in the coming days.
We do know that Trump is prepping with former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. That's for sure. So certainly taking this serious. Iris Tao from the North Lawn of the White House. Thank you. And Kamala Harris's team planning to continue a full campaign this week, following up on a busy Labor Day targeting union voters. In Pittsburgh, Harris made it clear with union interests and opposes selling U.S. steel to a Japanese firm. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
During Harris's visit to Pittsburgh on Monday with President Joe Biden, she voiced her concern for keeping steel-producing company U.S. Steel in the U.S.
U.S. Steel should remain American-owned and American-operated.
Japanese firm Nippon Steel announced in December that it would purchase U.S. Steel for $14.9 billion. In April, U.S. Steel shareholders approved the takeover bid, but the union that represents the company's workers is trying to block the deal.
And I made it clear last time I was in Pittsburgh, United States Steel, an iconic American company for more than a century, is going to remain an American company.
The campaign said on Tuesday that they, along with the DNC, will be sending nearly $25 million to support down-ballot Democrats. And the campaign is also ramping up the team's traveling schedule until Election Day. Wednesday afternoon, Harris will be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The campaign says it's her 25th visit to the state this year. Currently, poll averages in New Hampshire from Real Clear Politics is showing Harris leading Trump by 5%.
It's fake.
The team will also make several stops in battleground state Pennsylvania again. Thursday, Harris will return to Pittsburgh for the second time this week. Governor Tim Walz will be making 2 Pennsylvania stops, one in Lancaster on Wednesday and then Erie on Thursday. Then, later this week on Saturday, Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff is traveling to Allentown, Pennsylvania for Harris-Walz campaign events. Back to you.
And coming up, from tax attorney to a career in public service, U.S. Representative for California Brad Sherman shares his humorous journey into politics with us and reveals what drives his passion to serve the nation. That and more when we return.